Well, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another do-it-yourself workshop brought to you by your Home Depot. Today is all about how to tile that backsplash. Now, my name is Ron, last name George, and I'm joined again today by my good friend Robin, last name Rebel, and together we're going to kind of take some of the intimidation out of tiling that backsplash. It's no secret that tiling can add beauty and it can add value to any backsplash, any home whatsoever, but it has to be done right. When done improperly, it can detract from the beauty of your home. Now today, we're going to discuss how to successfully plan and tile that backsplash to enhance your space.
We are going to take a look at some of the tools you need. Then, all great projects are going to start with a plan. You got to kind of plan it out. So we're going to talk about some things that you need to consider even before you lay a single tile. And some of that preparation, because preparation is always the key. Then we're going to actually demonstrate how to apply the mortar, how to set your tiles, how to go ahead and grout those tiles. And finally, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about sealers to make sure that tile work stays beautiful for years to come. So Ron, why don't you take us through some tools?
Oh, you know it. Here's the deal. The good news, ladies and gentlemen, about tiling is you do not need a whole bunch of expensive tools in order to get a professional looking job. No power tools really needed, but the right tools are definitely going to make the job a whole lot easier. Now that first must-have tool is what we call a trowel. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes. The first one you're going to take a look at has the different shapes of the teeth, the two most common, or what we call square, usually used with something tiles over 4 inches, right? Also, we're going to go ahead, or should I say under 4 inches, also preferred for like, say, walls and ceilings, right? And the size of the notches in the trowel is going to determine the size of the tile. The bigger the notch, the bigger the tile, okay? Also, you can take a look at on the actual bag of mortar or thin set. It'll tell you whether it's a square notch or a V-notch. V-notches are also used when we're utilizing, say, a mastic or something like that. Always read. It'll tell you exactly what size you're going to need. Now, that next tool kind of looks similar to the trowel, but it's just a little bit different. It's what they call a grout float. Robin?
Yep. So grout float, again, has that basic shape of a trowel, but you'll notice all the edges are smooth. You'll also notice it's a lot thicker and it's flexible, right? Now, this grout float is used to actually apply the grout after your tiles have set, right? You're going to work it into the gaps between your tiles. And we're going to show you how to use this in just a little bit when we demonstrate how to grout tiles. When you're doing a tile job, chances are you're probably going to have to make a couple of cuts. Would be nice if we didn't have to, but you're probably going to have to make a couple of cuts. And there are some tools that you can use to make those clean, professional looking cuts.
Now, the thing about cutting tile, the first thing I want to go ahead and throw out there to you, safety, safety, safety. We're always going to want to put safety glasses on whenever you're cutting tile, whether you're going to be using nippers, wet saw sliders. We're going to cover down on all this in just a second. Now, that first thing we got is what we call a nipper. Now, nippers come in a variety of different styles. Now, they're meant to take what we call small little chunks or small little pieces out of the tile. You see, kind of like a pair of toenail clippers for an elephant or something, right? Gonna kind of nip them right off, right? And that's what I want to do is go ahead and show you how to use it. Now, I got a little tile here, a porcelain subway tile. I'm just going to take off the little edge there. Just going to grab onto it like you would your toenail or your actual nails, and you're just going to go ahead and nip it off. They're designed to make little cuts in tile, take off little pieces, little odd cuts. Very valuable tool to have in your tiling toolkit.
Right. Now, the next cutter we're going to look at is what we call a slider type cutter. These actually score and snap the tile, and it works great on like larger single tiles. You can even go much bigger than this. Now, sliders, not good for natural stone, but great for like your porcelain, your glazed ceramic, things like that. These are kind of portable, they're relatively small, and they're great to make what we call like on the spot cuts, right? Something that you can keep next to you for when you need a quick cut without a lot of fuss or mess.
You know, speaking of, how to, don't we have a video for that?
You know what? That's a great idea. We do have a video, so let's go ahead and roll that video for everybody.
Snap cutters are great for making straight cuts. They hold the tile in place, allow you to score at the cut line, and then snap the tile in two. If you don't want to buy one, they can be rented from Home Depot. To make a cut, measure and mark the cutting line on the tile. To ensure you end up with a true right angle, use a combination square as your straight edge when drawing the line. Set the tile in the cutter and align it so the cutting wheel rests directly on top of the cut line. Move the wheel away from you to the far edge of the tile. Supporting the tile to keep it level, lower the cutting wheel onto the edge of the tile and pull it toward you. Apply light pressure on the handle. Pressing too hard can cause the tile to crack and break. If the tile is more than 1/4 inch thick, you may have to repeat the process to score the tile deep enough. Lift the cutting wheel and slide the handle to the center of the tile. Lower the pressing T and strike the handle of the cutter quickly to snap the tile along the scoring line. That's all there is to it.
All right, so, that's a great little tool, but what happens if you have like really larger tiles or even like those natural stone tiles? What are you going to use for those, Ron?
I love it, man. Great question. So if it's time to take out the big guns, that's where the wet saw is going to come into play. We got another great video.
If you'll be doing lots of cutting, a wet saw makes the job fast and easy. They're called wet saws because they use water to keep the blade and the tile cool. It also helps reduce the amount of dust thrown out by the saw. Most wet saws have a sliding table that feeds the tile into the overhead blade. Always wear safety glasses and use ear protection when you use a wet saw. Since the saw creates a lot of water splatter, an apron is a good idea too. And anytime you're making adjustments to a wet saw, unplug the unit. As with the snap cutter, measure and mark the cutting line on the tile using a combination square as your straight edge. To help keep your hands away from the blade during the cut, set the fence on the saw so the widest part of the tile is between the blade and the fence. Back the tile away from the blade and turn on the saw. Holding the tile with both hands, feed it along the fence and toward the blade. Move the tile slowly to avoid overheating and cracking. Let the saw do the work, and keep your hands away from the blade. When you get to the end of the tile, turn off the saw and then remove the tile. Nearly every tiling job requires trimming tiles to fit around curves and obstructions. With the right tools and some practice, you can learn to cut curves, notches, and holes. In this section, we'll show you how. To make a curved cut on a wet saw, mark the outline of the cut on the tile with a grease pencil. Wearing safety glasses and using ear protection, make a series of straight, parallel cuts from the edge of the tile to the inside edge of the curve. The cut should be about 1/4 inch apart. The more cuts you make, the smoother and more accurate your curve will be. Turn off the saw when you're done. Use tile nippers to remove the thin slivers. They should snap off easily. Finally, use the saw to smooth any jagged edges around the cutout by applying sideways pressure on the tip of the blade. You can also make curve cuts with tile nippers. This handy tool nibbles off small bits of the tile. Firmly hold the tile glazed side up, and starting at one end of the curve, use the nippers to bite into the tile. Gradually widen the cut by nibbling away at it. Now switch to the other end of the curve and repeat the process. Keep alternating sides and work toward the middle until the curve is complete. If you need to smooth any ragged edges left behind, use an abrasive stone or rotary grinder. To cut notches with a wet saw, measure and mark the sides and the end of the notch. Using a wet saw, make a cut along one side of the notch. Rotate the tile, reset the fence, and make the second cut to form the notch. Stop each cut when the blade reaches the line marking the end of the notch. If the notch is wider than an inch, make a series of parallel cuts from the edge of the tile to the line marking the end of the notch. The cut should be about 1/4 inch apart. To remove the notch, break off the individual slivers with nippers. To trim the remaining ragged edges, put the tile back in the saw. With the saw running and the blade just touching the end of the notch, slide the tile from side to side so the tip of the blade smooths the jagged edge. To cut round holes in tile, use a carbide grit hole saw attached to a drill. To prevent the bit from wandering on the tile's hard, slick glaze when you start cutting, break through the glaze with a center punch. Gently tap it with a hammer. This will give the bit enough grip to dig in and start the hole. With the tile positioned firmly on a piece of scrap plywood, put the saw's pilot bit on the tile. Start drilling slowly and exert very little pressure so you won't break the tile. Take your time. When you feel the drill bit reaching the back of the tile, slow down to ensure a clean exit.
All right, so you can see that wet saws come in handy whenever you're trying to make lots of different cuts. But as you also could see, super, super messy. That's why I'm going to recommend that you use what we call a China pencil when you're making the marks on your tile. China pencils are designed to stay on the tile when they get wet. Now, you'll be able to clean it off, not to worry, but it's designed for you to be able to see your mark through the wet saw, or of course, per the video, you can go ahead and mark that with a little bit of painter's tape. It just makes things a little bit easier. Now, there's a couple other quick ways that I want to go ahead and show you how you can cut your tile. If everyone can see here, this is a diamond tipped blade for cutting tile. This fits my angle grinder, so I can cut like a circle. I can do different things like that. So it's super important to know that anything with a diamond tip will cut through stone and tile. You can also get hole saws that will cut 1/2 inch holes, 3/4 inch holes, 1 inch holes into your tile. If you were doing something in your bathroom and you needed those faucet pipes to come out of the wall of your tile. So it's super, super cool. Lots of different ways in order for you to cut your tile in order to get things done. Now, that's not all we need in order to finish our project. What else is there?
So the first thing that's going to draw attention to an unprofessional tile project are uneven lines. And the easiest way to keep that from happening, spacers, these itty bitty little spacers. Now these do come in a variety of sizes. These are removable spacers, and as you can see, they're flexible. They're small too. All right. Now these happen to be a 1/8 inch size. They have them in quarters and larger, a smaller. They have a bunch of different sizes. They come in a large bag. And these can be reused, all right? You can see we've put ours in a Ziploc here in order to hold on to them for later. Now, in addition to those, we also have these other type. Now you can see these are not flexible. These are hard plastic. These are leave-in spacers. And these are designed to be used this way. And you actually leave them in, grout right over top of them, right? So you don't even have to worry about it. Now, spacers are going to help give you that straight, uniform line that is the hallmark of a professional tile job. Now, there's also 2 things you can never have enough of when you're tiling: sponges and buckets.
That is absolutely right, Robin. When we think about the bucket can be used for lots of different things. In a tiling job, this bucket's going to be used to mix that mortar, mix that grout, as well as rinsing out all those wonderful sponges that you cannot live without. You want to have tons of sponges and tons of buckets. It's going to make your life a whole lot simpler, and it's going to give you a better finish in the overall project. Right. Now, we have all the tools squared away that we need. Let's take a look at the steps in the process of completing that tile backsplash.
Great idea.
Now, before anything gets hung on the wall, plan, plan, plan. My dad always used to say, plan your work, work your plan. If you don't have a plan, you got a plan to fail. Ladies and gentlemen, tile backsplash is absolutely on target with that. It's going to make your job a whole lot easier. It's going to eliminate a lot of the headaches as you work through the project. So that first step in creating that awesome plan, you got to know how much you need, right?
Yep.
So how much tile do you need and how do you figure that out? Well, we're going to break your backsplash down into what we call squares and triangles and sections. As you can see on the slide, we need to figure out how much tile you're going to need section by section using length times width. Okay? Keep all those units the same that you can. All inches are all feet. All inches are all feet. Feet is better than inches because most tile is sold by what we call square footage. Now you can also use a handy dandy tile calculator. You can go out to homedepot.com, pull that tool down. Makes life simple. You just got to pump in the information. Right. It's going to tell you exactly what you need.
All right. So we measure out all those sections. We add them all up. Is that all we need? Comes up to 27 square feet. That's it. That's all I need.
In a perfect world, the answer would be yes, but here it's not a perfect world. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you. I've been doing this for a while myself, and I still make mistakes. Yeah. You want to count for mistakes. You want to count for practice. You want to practice a few cuts before you actually cut what you're going to put on the wall. You might not be happy with the first turn. So you're going to want some extra stuff, right? So you should always account for about 10% more, especially whenever you're laying it for is a linear pattern, right? You want to account for 15% more if you're going to do a diagonal pattern. Remember, it's always cool to have a little extra at the end of the project, because what happens if a year from now there's a crack in the tile and you got to replace it? You go down to where you bought it, but guess what? They're not carrying that tile anymore.
Right.
So you want to always have at least a box extra, keeping it on hand for problems like that.
Yep, that's really important. And you're also, that 15% also goes for patterns, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have a little bit more so that you can go ahead and match up patterns. So a pattern tile, even if you're laying it, in that linear fashion, you want to have some extra so that you can match up that pattern. All right, now we've figured out how much tile we need. We can just start attaching it to the wall, right? Easy peasy. We're ready to go.
This is the thing about her. She wants to get things done. Gotta love her about that, but you gotta slow down a little bit. Slow down. Your plan's not complete yet.
All right.
We figured out how much we need. The next step is choosing the right tile or taking a look at what you're going to use for your job. Are we going to just use maybe a single tile? Are we going to go for maybe a mesh back 12 by 12 style tile? What are we going to use in reference to that? All tiles come with their pros and cons. Porcelain tile, ceramic glazed tile, relatively simple, easy to maintain, while natural stone will need to be sealed to keep stuff from getting into those pores. And those mesh back mosaics that we just showed you are easier to hang, but larger tiles will make a grand statement.
It's true.
Just take a look at all the different styles. Get some advice at the flooring department. Talk to those associates about what you want, what you're looking for, and what ultimately is the right tile for you.
All right. Okay. So now we're ready to tile, right? Okay.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost there. We need to prep the area. You got to clean the walls. If it's a kitchen, got to get that grease off the walls because you want that thin set, that mortar to bond to that wall. If it's painted, you have to scuff it up a little bit. If you removed old tile off the wall and you got a bunch of dings and dents and partial holes in your drywall, take the time to patch them up. And this is a good time for us to tell you, we've got a drywall repair workshop as well to show you how to handle that wall repair. Make sure everything is good to go. Make sure that wall is dry. Like I said before, if you have some kind of a sheen on the wall, take a moment to scuff it up so that you have a good bond between that mortar and that drywall. You ultimately have to protect stuff.
Right.
We're talking a kitchen here in most cases, right? We're talking granite countertops, coarse countertops. We're talking about quality cabinetry in most cases, and you want to be able to protect that, right? Put painter's tape down, plastic sheeting, drop cloths, protect your investment. Tiling can be messy. It's a fun project, but a messy project.
All right. So now we have to be ready to start hanging the tile, right?
Yeah, we're not there yet. I know you're sad. I know everybody's sad. I know. There's one more step, and I promise you this is a critical step, and you're not going to be sad to know that I want you to dry fit your tile. This gives you an opportunity to move tiles around. Maybe you wanted that darker one over here or the lighter one over here, whatever it is. That is going to allow you to do that. It's also going to show you where to cut for your outlet. It's also going to show you where your cuts need to be. You want to go ahead and dry fit, take the time to lay it out. Do not shortchange yourself on this step. It will be a lifesaver. You want to kind of take a look at the pattern. You have that pattern. Make sure it's centered correctly. Make sure they're kind of running correctly so everything looks good.
All right. So dry fitting the tiles really makes, for taking the time to dry fit is really going to make for an easier installation when time actually matters, when you have that mortar on the wall. Now, dry fitting is also going to allow you to take the time to measure out all of your cuts without having to worry about that mortar drying out on you. It's going to give you that freedom to make those cuts.
I know, that's awesome. And we said some things a little earlier. We want to make sure that you dry fit, you're using that nipper or the sliders right there on the spot. It's a very, very time-saving way to cut tile. To make the cuts right there in place as you go. Also, you can aware of numbering your tiles after you dry fit, right? Take your China marker just like this. Take and write that number right on the back. There's number 1, set it down and stack those tiles. That way you know exactly what tile goes where in your dry fit process and you won't get lost. Pretty awesome. I talked about the outlet. Make marks for your outlet. If you're using a mesh back type tile, you can just cut the mesh back with a good utility knife, right? And that way you're good to go with that, or you know where to make those cuts so it's going to fit over that outlet. Use that multi-tool, like I said before, grinder, to cut those tiles. You can use a hand slider. You're going to have a hand slider to cut those individual small tiles right on the spot. Awesome ways to get things done right where you're at.
All right, so finally, we are ready to hang the tile, right?
Okay. We are, but before we get there, we want to talk to you a little bit about mortar types, right? We're going to show you how to apply it in just a second, but I want Robin to run us through mortar types.
Sure. All right, so the most common is the powdered thin set. Comes in a bag, right? There are a variety of different types that you're going to find depending on the application, where you're installing it, the type of tile that you're using. But one of the most versatile is what we call a modified thin set, right? It can be used in a variety of different areas, even like underwater in pools or fountains. It also can be used with a variety of different tile types. Now, once you have the correct type of mortar, the next thing you're going to want to look at is the color. They come in a gray and they come in a white. All right, you want to use the white on your lighter tiles, and you want to use that gray, it's like a medium darker gray, on your darker tiles.
Now, I get the reason why you kind of do that, but what does color of the thin set, why does it really matter?
Okay, so that's a great question. And the reason is the way thin set works is it actually, as it's curing, it's going to kind of absorb into the back of the tile. Now, if you have a really light colored tile, you can actually get what they call bleed, where that dark mortar will actually, the discolor or bleed through to the surface of your tile. You don't want to take all of this time, energy, and money just to have the thin set color bleed through to your tile face.
Yeah, and you know what's so cool about what you just said? That's particularly important when we're talking about natural stone.
Right.
You don't have to worry about it usually at all when it comes to porcelains or ceramics because they have what they call micro pores. They're not these great big pores that absorb as far as that goes. So we got this powdered thin set, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what are we gonna do? Like mix it up in like a glass, like Quick or chocolate milk or something?
Yeah, I think you're gonna need a little bit more than that. And it just so happens that we have a great video for that. So we're gonna go ahead and play that video for you to show you exactly how to mix up that thin set.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take some of that, that fear out of mixing thin set. You want that bad product. It's always great to have that bad product. First thing we're gonna do, gonna have a couple different things. You wanna have some safety gloves. You wanna protect those eyes, and as always, you don't want to breathe this stuff, so you actually want to go ahead and get yourself a quick mask. You don't want to be breathing any thin set dust or anything like that. And this is what we call a margin trial. I'm just going to use it to kind of test the consistency as we do it. Now, as the camera starts to go down, you'll start to see the other things I have. I already have some thin set in a bucket, all right, and I also have some water in a bucket. Key point of reference is you're always going to want that water in the bucket. First, I took the thin set out of the bag to make it easier for the transition. I'm now going to go ahead and pour the thin set in, and then I'm going to go ahead and start mixing it up. I'm just going to go ahead and dump it in there. And just don't be afraid, it's going to make a little mess, so let's not worry about that. Okay. Now, another thing you want to think about is, depending on what you're mixing it with, if you're mixing it with a regular drill, like I have, and a mixing paddle, you don't want to try to do a whole bag at one time because it will be a little too much for the actual drill to handle, okay? This is a regular little 18 volt, 20 volt drill with a mixing paddle on it. Let's see what we got. So we're gonna go ahead and stick this in here. We're gonna start off nice and slight, kind of like just a little cake batter, just a little light there. We're gonna get it started. And now we're just gonna mix it for about 5 minutes this way. And if we have to add a little water, we add a little water. It's always a good idea to start with less water. All right, so it's thoroughly mixed up. Really quick, let me show you. That's the consistency you want. You don't want it to fall off. You don't want it to fall off the trowel. You want it to just kind of stick on the trowel, like chunky, kind of creamy peanut butter. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our 10 minutes and let that slate time set it all up, come back, mix it, burp it, and then we're ready to use it. All right, so now we've let it sit for about 10 minutes. As it kind of goes through that reaction, getting those chemicals all mixed up, we're gonna give it one final mix for a minute or two. We're gonna go ahead and check that consistency. Then we're gonna bang all the air bubbles out of it. So let's go. All right, another quick tip. Take your paddle after you're done and just drop it in the bucket of water that you have, that you used for extra water. Now let's go ahead and check that consistency. Now look at that. That's perfect. That's gonna hold those ridges that you're gonna need so they collapse and hold that tile really good. One final tip. We're gonna wanna burp this bad boy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just grab the bucket, we're gonna hammer it on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, what this is doing, it's releasing all the air bubbles in the thin set to the top. You do not want air bubbles in the thin set. And there you have it. Now you're ready to lay your thin set. That was awesome, right? So it seems a little messy though, right? Is there anything else that we can use or do?
Yeah, there's a couple other products that you can use out there. So when you're doing a backsplash, you can use some of the pre-mix products like this pre-mix thin set. These products are definitely easier, they're cleaner, but they're going to be a little bit more expensive. You can also use what's mastic-based products like this AquaPro. This is kind of like a glue. So mastic is an organic product, and because of that, it can actually harbor mold in really high moisture areas, and it can also lose its hold if it gets exposed to a lot of moisture or really high heat. So you may want to watch that behind a stove if you're, tiling behind your stove. The advantage to using a mastic-based product is basically it's got a really high bond strength, right? And it sets a little bit faster. So you don't have to worry about as much of a cure time that you do when you're using a thin set. All right, so that's a lot of choices. Is there really anything else?
Oh, there's a lot of other things that you could choose from, right? There are specialty mortars out there for special types of tile, right? For specific purposes. Glass is a very common backsplash material. You have glass backsplash,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And using a glass mortar will help the true color of the glass shine through. It'll look great with that beautiful white backdrop. There are fast setting mortars, but you want to be careful with those. As a do-it-yourselfer, you might not have that experience to get that mortar down in time, and that stuff will set up too fast for you. There are lightweight mortars. There are large format tile or large tile mortars as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, if simplicity is your number one priority, then we've got you covered. And that is the Simple Mat, which is exactly that. It is simple. All right. Now, these are actually adhesive sheets that are easy to cut, easy to install. You can actually cut them with scissors, right? They hold really fast. And since there's no curing or dry time, you can go ahead and grout immediately. As a matter of fact, you should go ahead and grout immediately with these. Now, obviously, that is some really, those have some really great advantages, cutting it with scissors, no mess, no fuss. But again, it can be expensive. You're going to pay for that convenience. And since it's an adhesive, just like the mastic, it really shouldn't be used in those really wet areas. Now, we've decided what we're going to go ahead and attach our tile with. I'm going to let Ron show you how to actually attach those tiles. All right. So Ron, take it away.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you can't see me, but you can hear me. We're here in my little corner here. Got my cement board up here. This is kind of simulating that drywall. This would be like a corner of your backsplash. But your countertop here, as you can see, we've got the countertop protected. Got some plastic down. We're ready to go ahead and get that thin set on the wall. You can also see I'm using some 12 by 12 type of tile in the actually glue dotted backs. I pre-cut everything. Everything has been dry fitted to fit. And now all I'm going to do is apply the mortar and set the tile. It's not difficult to do. I've chosen a simple set type of product just for time's sake. I wasn't going to mix any and then put it on here. But first thing I want you guys to realize you do when you open up that bucket, we'll go ahead and take something, just mix it up, get it mixed up, get the stuff that was on the top and mix it all in. Then all we're going to do is we're going to take it out with our trowel, with this flat part of our trowel. And once we're going to do that, we're just going to kind of get it on the wall. And you can see it's going to fall down. It's going to fall down. See if I can get this on the wall for you. And another thing to remember is, don't worry about it. It's gonna be messy. That's part of the deal that you signed up for when you signed up for this, unless you're going to use that Simple Mat that Robin just talked about. But that's why we want to go ahead and prep everything to make sure everything looks good. Now, I'm putting it on the wall first, and then I'm going to comb out my ridges. One of the important things to worry about when you're doing your ridges is you want to make sure that they all go in one direction. And I'll just show you that in a second. And you're going to want to do a little at a time, not a whole bunch at a time, right? Okay, now I want to show you a little trick here. Take a margarine trowel or something and just kind of scrape it off the bottom. And then I use it to scrape off my trowel, right? Now, this is important. You got your teeth, right? 45-degree angle is what you're going to be setting it at. Let's just say that this is a 45-degree angle. So you're going to want to scrape at a 45-degree angle, and you're going to want it to go in one direction. Now, you see all those nice, lovely ridges? That is what is going to hold your tile. And remember, you only need 85% coverage. I'm going to slap a little bit more on right there. And then I'm just going to pour this on thing. There we go. Sometimes it can be a little stubborn. Almost ready to go, everybody. Helps to have another sponge down here just in case with a little water in it, just in case you get some on your tile. And that's going to happen too. So don't worry about that. Go ahead and put this on. Now, one of the things you need to think about is you got to have a spacer down here, because if you remember, right, well, you don't, we're going to have a grout joint down here. So you're going to want to put some spacers. You're going to pull that up a little bit. You can keep working this. See how nice that looks? I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Make sure you got plenty of spacers, right, because you want everything to look nice and even. As you can see, I'm putting them in the bottom. Go ahead and add the second one on, right? And I already pre-cut the small ones. Another thing, another place for the spacers is going to be where these touch. Okay, so you see how I've got these in here? You want to make sure that you're putting spacers where these are touching. Right? Now, the last thing that I'm going to do before I turn it over to Robin and we talk a little bit about the next portion, as you can see, I've already got the little pre-cut ones. I can stick a couple of those in there too, just to show you. Just like that. One here. So you guys get the idea. Everybody's getting the idea? And there you go. You're just going to go ahead and you can put spacers in there if you need to. But I want to show you this little pro tip. Use your grout float. Everybody see the grout float, right? Woo, there it is. I like to press it. I like to press it. This way it's going to help it sit. And you notice how I didn't put too much thin set on there? Because you don't want it squirting through. You don't want everything squirting through, do you? Right? And then I'm going to wipe that off. Now, everybody sees that some of it got squirted through. Everybody see that, right? So what do you do in a case like that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is put my spacers in here, right? There we go. First thing I'm going to do is take my little screwdriver here. You see the little screwdriver? I'm just going to go ahead and clean out that grout joint real quick. Just going to go ahead and clean that out. And that is going to allow me to have a good clean area for my grout joints. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you set your tile and put mortar on your backsplash.
All right, now, while that thin set is curing, we're gonna talk a little bit about grout. I'm gonna take you through a little bit more about grout. Now, first of all, those grout lines that you see are really just a matter of personal preference, right? You're gonna need to have some space between your tiles to allow for expansion and contraction, but how much of a space is really up to you. Now, there is sanded grout and unsanded grout. Unsanded grout is going to be used for really small grout lines, like anything up to about 1/8 of an inch, right? Or on tiles that could be easily scratched by that harsh sand. Sanded grout lines, that sand is going to add a little bit more strength and stability to those larger grout lines. Now, you can also look for something like a single component grout, kind of like this Fusion Pro that we have right here. This can be used on all grout types. It's pre-mixed. It never needs to be sealed, but is going to be a little more expensive, right? Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about color, all right? The color is totally a matter of preference as well, but it can really make a difference in the overall look of your project. Now, this picture here really only shows 2 different tiles, but you're getting 6 different looks depending on the type of grout that you put in there, just by changing out that color. So do you want your grout to blend in and kind of give you that seamless type look? Or do you really want it to act as like a graphic pattern, right? So what exactly are you looking for with your grout? It's just one way to add your personal style and flair to the project.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and set up and demonstrate how that is. Again, it's not very hard. It's just a little messy. Now, I will go ahead and add one thing. As you notice, I was wiping everything down with my hands, right? If you want, thin set and things like that can dry out your skin. Please take a moment to put some of those rubber gloves on. Keep your hands protected from the thin set if you so choose. Now, Robin is go ahead and setting up to go ahead and grout a backsplash. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to her.
All right, so here we are. This thin set has already set. Now you can still see I've used the leave-in spacers. Now don't be shy with the spacers, okay? Especially, I'm sorry, these aren't the leave-ins. These are the takeouts. These are removable spacers. Don't be shy with them. So all of these pieces on the ends are cuts. And you can see I can have as many as 6 spacers around a little cut of a tile, because that's what's going to keep these grout lines nice and even. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, of course, pull out all of your spacers. Now, these were just left in place to make sure that nothing shifted while the thin set actually started curing. So we're going to pull all these out. These were the ones that were in between those tile sheets. Now, a couple of things about your float, all right? This is your grout float. Remember, we had square ends and we had round ends. The square ends are going to be great for taking the grout out of the bucket. The round ends are going to be really great for getting it into the grooves. Now, a couple of things I want you to look at. If we're putting in grout, okay, and I'm going in this direction, you can see that my float is actually going to get caught in the grooves between the tiles. Now, the whole point is to fill those grooves with grout. So if I'm catching, as I'm doing this, I'm actually going to pull grout out of it. This is one of those situations where you're going to want to make sure you're going across the grout lines on an angle. See, if I hold it at an angle, no catching. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and use some of the pre-mixed grout that we have. I'm just going to scoop it up on my grout float. All right. Now you don't need a whole ton. Remember, you're just trying to fill in those spaces. And you're going to start just smearing it all over the face of your tile. All right, so you just want to kind of get it in there again, utilize that 45-degree angle and kind of just keep forcing it into those joints. All right, keep working it, keep working it. This is where you kind of want to push a little bit, may need to get a little bit more. And you're just gonna wanna force it down into all of those joints. You want a nice, full, tight fill of all of those grout lines. All right. If you kind of noticing you're missing an area, you can kind of focus on it a little bit. So right down here, I'm noticing it's not taking it as easy. So we kind of just focus on getting it all over everything. And this is going to take a little bit of finessing, fine tuning. You definitely have a little time to work with this. So take the time to do it right, kind of force it in there to get nice, tight, complete, filled grout joints. All right. Looks like I'm missing a little bit here in the center. Scoop up a little more. Now again, this is another reason why you go ahead and protect your countertops and your surfaces. You can see, just like with the thin set, as I start smearing this in, there are definitely pieces that are falling off, chunks that are falling off, and that's okay. You just want to keep everything clean and protected. All right, so that has taken care of all of my joints. They're all nice and full, but this is a mess, right? So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and, again, running that diagonal across those lines so nothing catches, scrape off as much from the surface as you can. This is where those sponges and buckets come in. Now, I've got a bucket full of water. You're going to want to make sure you wring out your sponge. You don't want it dripping wet. You really just want it damp. Your first pass, it's just 2 swipes. You're going to go once, take off as much as you can, flip the sponge, go again. That's it. Don't try to take any more off right now with this sponge. Rinse out your sponge. Get a new sponge. All right? So get it nice and clean. Wring it out. Nice and tight, so it's just damp. And then again, 1, 2. Now you don't want to, now again, I'm going to use this little side edge here, just to get a little off. You don't want to press with the sponge. Remember, the point is to leave the grout in the joints. You don't want to like push real hard on the sponge. You're just trying to get everything off the surface, right? So now we're going to do it another time. Wipe everything off. Flip it, wipe everything off. And we've got just about all of it off. After usually the 3rd time, possibly a 4th time, you're going to need, the more you clean off the surface, the less you're going to have to worry about grout haze. All right, so you don't want a haze drying on or a cloudiness drying on your tile. So that's a big issue there. All right.
Hey, speaking of grout haze, got a pro tip for you. You know, by the way, if you're wiping it down and you start to notice that a couple of your joints didn't fill like they were supposed to, don't be afraid to go ahead and put a little bit more grout on there and press it back in it. Not a big deal. Now, getting back to the pro tip in grouting, I like to use 3 clean buckets of water and 3 separate sponges. That way, you've got a bucket for heavy, you've got a bucket for medium, and you've got a bucket for light. That's what's so, so critical. Now, here is the tip. The grout haze, right? We don't want that residue accumulating on our tile after it's all over and done with. So you're going to get yourself a little container of what we call grout haze remover, and you're going to put some in that 3rd clean bucket of water. That way, whenever it actually dries, after you take that final wipe or final approach off that 3rd bucket, you're going to limit any opportunity for grout haze. Now, we've done everything we needed to do, but we've got a gap at the top where our cabinets meet, And we have a gap at the bottom where I spaced out off the countertop. Do those need to get grouted?
Right, that is a great question. Those are connection points between different types of materials, right? Your countertop is different from your backsplash is different from your cabinet. And those areas where you're meeting two different materials should always be caulked, all right? Now, you can use a caulk that matches your grout. You could also use a clear or paintable caulk, right? Something that will help it all blend in. Now, the reason for using a caulk instead of a grout is because you're coming up against different materials. They're going to have different expansion and contraction rates. So you need that flexibility when things are going to kind of expand and contract. So that caulk is going to give it to you.
You know what's cool about that? We talked earlier about having products that match your grout. Like we have grouts that have the matching caulk. But not only do we have matching caulk, but we have matching consistency of caulk. And what I mean when I say that, I mean that we have what they call unsanded caulk that matches. So if you use an unsanded version, you can get that. We also have a sanded version of caulk as well. Right. Now, you're rushing to do this. I want to know, hey man, is it time to clean up and go home?
Almost.
Oh, here we go.
Not quite yet. Now, at this point, you can go ahead and you can definitely clean up, right? And there will be some cleanup involved. But there's one more step that you're going to need to keep that tile job looking beautiful for years. You are going to need to seal your grout and tile. Now, depending on the type, like Ron said earlier, ceramic, you don't need to seal the tile, but you will need to seal the grout. It's not going to be done immediately. You've got to let that grout set up. So you want to make sure that you let your grout cure for at least 48 hours. 72 is better. If you want to go ahead and wait till the next weekend, you can absolutely do that as well. So Ron, what do we use for sealing?
Well, there's a couple different types of sealers that I'm going to go ahead and show you. But before we get there, I love how you said it's okay to wait, right? It's okay to wait till next weekend. Here's the thing that I would caution you on, okay? If this is your kitchen and it's a working kitchen and you want to use it and you haven't sealed your tile yet, especially the tumbled stone or natural stone, or even the grout joint lines of a porcelain or ceramic, you want to be very careful. You don't have that spaghetti sauce bubble up and go all over your new backsplash, because if this isn't sealed yet, that spaghetti sauce is going to get into those pores. It's going to stain that tile. So be very, very careful when you go to do that. Now, when we talk about sealers, depending on the type of tile and the type of grout will determine whether or not it gets sealed. The most protective sealer that we have in the market today is called a chemical impregnating sealer. It's designed to get absorbed by that stone, okay? It will soak in. They do come in chemical-based. They come in water-based. Chemical-based are going to actually get absorbed into the tile further. They last longer. In fact, this particular one comes with a 20-year warranty now, which is super, super good. Water-based are going to be less kind of smelly, if you will, right? And
less harsh.
Right, less harsh, and they're not going to last as long. You're going to have to reapply as needed. Sealing is going to keep dirt, keep things out, stains bad on good backsplash, right? One last thing I'll say, follow the manufacturer's directions on sealing the tile and your grout. This step, ladies and gentlemen, will ensure all that hard work that we just showed you that you need to do for that beautiful backsplash will keep that backsplash beautiful for years to come.
Right. Now, we covered a lot of information today. We talked about the tools you need, how to kind of plan out your tile for the best possible look, how to mix and apply your mortar or adhesive, of course, how to set the tiles, grout the tiles, and finally, applying that sealer to keep that tile job looking fresh for years to come. Now, don't forget to grab our resource guide so that you have all of this great information.
Now, in addition to all the resources that we have available to you to download, there is a cornucopia. That's right, a cornucopia of additional resources on our website. Things like those tile calculators I talked about, project guides, and will help you get the most out of your project.
Right. Now you can also check our other online workshops. We've got lots of great workshops out there.
Now, on behalf of Home Depot, our entire Workshops Live crew, Robin and myself, I would like to thank you for joining us today. And we hope that we have given you the knowledge, the encouragement for you doers out there to get more